Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and this episode 442. I am joined on this chilly, wintry November morning, Tuesday morning, by my co-host Stacy. That is at StacyPatton89 on Twitter. Stacy, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well. Nice sunny day.
It is sunny. I wouldn't say it's nice, but we're not here to talk about the weather. We're here to talk about the Knicks. But before we do that, I do have to make a few announcements. First, being that Strickland has a YouTube channel. Check that out. We obviously have videos on there like this one, where you may be watching this. If you are, if not done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. Strickland also has merch, which you can find on our website, www.strict.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store. You can find all kinds of cool stuff on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. Strickland has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Strickland's podcast that I host every Friday at the Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, a podcast hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Zach Blatter, and you get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod, where I rant about the next even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Murdo, one of the best in the business. And you get access to Strictly NFL, which is a podcast hosted by Constantine Metricos and Desmond Novak that is about the NFL. There are further tiers. It's $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. Let's go with a variety of additional benefits, like listening in on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting podcasts alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, NHL to entertainment and political props. Head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. So the Knicks successfully defeated the Brooklyn Nets over the weekend twice on Friday and Saturday, and then absolutely thrashed the fairly deplorable Washington Wizards last night. After these three straight victories, the Knicks they're third in offensive rating. They have a 121.8 offensive rating, just behind the Boston Celtics. They rank second in true shooting percentage. They rank second in effective field goal percentage. They rank third in turnover percentage. And they have the seventh best net rating in the league, plus 5.9 net rating per 100 possessions. They're still playing at the slowest pace in the entire league. An interesting note, they're actually all the way up to now third in defensive rebound percentage, an issue that reared its head at various points early on, most notably, I think, against Boston opening night and then against Houston and Atlanta, weirdly enough. Those are three games that the Knicks they got hurt on the glass, but they have shored that up. The defense still remains a work in progress. They have the 21st. They're ranked 21st in defensive rating. I think the biggest concerns here, they are 22nd right now in effective field goal percentage, 24th in effective field goal percentage against. So that is definitely something that you need to get control of, and just do a better job of contesting shots. But, I think there's obviously offensively, there's a ton of positive signs. And for me, the biggest positive is coming into after last night's game, the Knicks rank third in assists per 100 possessions. They're at 28.7. They're only behind Golden State and Denver, who are both at 29.5. That is very surprising given how Thibodeau's offenses have previously ran. They also have the third lowest turnover rate in the league, so that's pretty good. There's a lot of things in their profile that are eye popping. One of the ones that I never know what to make of this, because there are teams that allow a ton of threes that are good or that are good defenses, and there are teams that make it a point to cut off threes that are not particularly good defensively, but then there are obviously the opposite examples of those things too. So I never know exactly how much of that is a good or bad thing just in terms of profile. But I do think it's fair to say the Knicks, at minimum, have not done a particularly good job of making teams feel them physically early in games, and that it's allowed a number of teams to get comfortable. And when you're comfortable, you shoot better from the field, et cetera, et cetera. So they definitely need to do a better job with that. They've gotten kind of fucked, in my opinion, in terms of the whistle so far this year. I'm not going to sit here and say like the refs have cost them games or anything like that, but they're at this point they rank 26th in free throw to field goal attempts. So basically like free throw rate, if you want to think of it that way. They're actually 28th in free throw rate, just pure free throw rate, not adjusted for how many field goal attempts you're taking, which is obviously not ideal. And their opponent free throws per field goal attempt they rank 14th. So they're middle of the pack there. They were really good in that last year. Obviously, you should expect kind of a drop off on that, given Karl-Anthony Towns' issues. Anyway, I'm just trying to paint the picture here. I think there's a lot of good things that have gone on for this team. There are obviously also still concerning signs. I mean, we even saw one last week, right, where they dropped that game to Chicago, which to me, I was not that upset about that, because I think it was their first back-to-back of the year. They had played a pretty kind of intense game the night before, that the NBA Cup game against Philly, which was also Joel Embiid's opening performance of the season. What an opener for Joel Embiid. What an opening 3 games. He's really just hit the ground running or rolling like the fat piece of shit he is. But they dropped that game after a crazy comeback. I mean, they probably should have won that game. Josh Hart gets called for a foul. I think it was a foul. He thought it was a foul, so I will take him at his word. And then Brunson shot. I mean, it basically was in, then it comes out. But I guess like the way you got to look at it is you almost it's kind of crazy. Like they played that game, they're down the entire time. They're down like 22. They make this huge comeback. They have the lead, last possession for Chicago, and they get up, and the Knicks have a game winner nearly drop in for them anyway. It doesn't happen. And then the next game against fucking Brooklyn on Friday, the Knicks are in control for basically the entire first 3 quarters. And then the fourth quarter comes in. And I got to say, I didn't get a chance to talk about this because I didn't do the post games over the weekend. I thought that fourth quarter against Brooklyn on Friday was one of the worst officiated quarters I've ever watched in my life. I have no idea what the fuck they were calling on half this stuff. And the thing that drove me nuts was that play with OG where he gets shoved to the ground over fighting over a screen that Dorian Finney-Smith was setting. He took umbrage at it for I'm not sure exactly what reason, and decided to shove him over the ground and hover over him and start talking shit. That somehow was called a double technical. I will never understand that. That should have been a flagrant 2. Should have been ejected from the game. That is literally what a flagrant 2 is. It's what it is. They lost control of that game, and the Knicks also missed a lot of open threes in that fourth quarter. What are you going to do? You got to make those threes. You got to take those threes. You got to make those threes. They were shorthanded in that game. Also, no Karl-Anthony Towns, no Deuce McBride. Anyway, Brooklyn comes back and they hit all these crazy shots, and voila, they take the lead 122-121, and then Brunson hits a game winner with like 5 seconds left. Dennis Schroeder tries to go down the other way. Mikal Bridges blocks him, and c'est la vie, we win. So we lost against Chicago 124-120 or 123-124, and then we beat Brooklyn the next night, or 2 nights later, 124-122. So kind of crazy how similar those games were just in opposite directions. But yeah, I mean, look, the Knicks go they're 4-1 since last time we talked. Or did we talk? No, we talked after the Philly game, actually, right? So they're 3-1 after the last time we talked. Whatever it was, who the fuck cares? I think they're 4-1 since the last time we talked. And there's a lot of positive signs. There are still things that concern me defensively. I think they have definitely changed some coverages in pick and roll, which there's like, and this is a positive thing to me. So when I've seen some of these blown rotations against Brooklyn or against Washington last night, they're not as concerning to me because it looks like they're trying to do a bit more defensively. They're adapting. I think they're having Towns show higher at the level of the screen. I thought that when Sims was in, at least in real basketball time last night, they were having him switch more, hard hedging more. They did that against Brooklyn in both games too, in my opinion, from what I saw. So I think there's starting to be more kind of tools in the toolbox that Tibbs is willing to use. So yeah, look, the Knicks are 8-6, great offense, 3rd in offensive rating, bad defense, 21st in defensive rating, 7th in net rating. What have you seen? What are your thoughts? Now that we're about 1/5 of the way through the season almost.
You hit on most of the points I would make. I definitely agree on the officiating Brooklyn game. I think before last week, before the Philly game, I think a lot of people said 3-1 would be a good result for that week. It's tough to beat a team twice in a row, particularly with the Knicks. Obviously Brooklyn is a scrappy team. I think they had a huge lead on Boston, ended up losing in overtime. They played Cleveland pretty tough. So they have some talent, right? We saw what Cam Thomas was able to do on Friday. For some reason, Cam Johnson is just getting the prime Michael Jordan whistle. And they were pretty physical with Brunson. And they were, I thought I think he's really figuring out what buttons to push at what time. Friday he didn't shoot the ball well. Friday he shot the ball really well. He had 37, and he had the game winner. On Sunday he didn't shoot the ball well, but he had double. He's actually had back-to-back double-digit assist games, and more than it's the teams that we've played. I was saying this in the chat. I think teams like Boston and Cleveland, and Houston even, they have these wings that they don't mind switching on to Cat. They're switching those ball screens. They're daring the Knicks to beat them one-on-one. The Knicks are talented enough. But the other thing that does is it often takes away the 3-point line. So that's where you see some of those big discrepancies. I think what teams that don't have that kind of personnel have to often do is just rely on getting the ball out of Brunson's hands no matter what. And he's just adapted really well, and he has some guys around him, right? And that's why a lot of the consternation I've seen, is Cat really the number one option on the Knicks? Is Brunson the number one option? I think the way the offense is going is working well, and I think to just look at Brunson's stats versus Cat ignores the fact that a lot of what the Knicks are doing is predicated on just how much attention Brunson draws. And I think he's starting to do a really good job of figuring it out. I thought his passing was awesome. Washington is not a very good team, and not a very good defense, but Brunson was, he just seemed to have complete control. And with a new team, I think, you can say opponent caveats are there. That's fine. But right off the bat, going against Boston and then a couple games later, Cleveland, with a completely new team, those are not great. Like, if you're going to say this is, we shouldn't get too excited about them playing Washington. By the flip side, we probably were harsh on the performances they had against Cleveland and Boston. And Boston, they had a pretty solid offensive performance. And against Cleveland, they had a lead until, they blew it into the fourth. So I think yesterday, I think, was the most comfortable I've seen Cat and Brunson look. And the offense just looks incredibly dangerous. And, we've had good offensive ratings before. I think there was the last 2 years they've been top 10, right?
The Knicks and defensive rating?
No, offensive.
Yeah. They were third 2 years ago, and then they were seventh last year.
Yeah, but it's so much more versatile. And then third again, by the way. There's so many things that defense has to account for, right? First of all, you have Brunson, who can be an offense unto himself. We've seen that. You just have to worry. Cat is a 3-level scorer. He's too big for many wings. He can shoot over anyone. I mean, like, it's just it's so refreshing and such a cheat code. It feels like where Cat, like, there's a defender in a reasonable range, but Cat can just square up and shoot. And a defender in good position, there's nothing they can do about it, and it's a 3. I'm sure he won't shoot 50% for the entire season, but he's just getting. He might. But it's more than just Cat, right? So you switch those pick and rolls, or you put a wing on Brunson, right? That was his supposed kryptonite, right? Like, put Aaron Nesmith on it. Okay, who are you putting on OG Anunoby? Who are you putting on Mikal Bridges? Who are you putting on Hart? Because all 3 of those guys have shown out. I'll start with Bridges. That he's shooting, I think, over 70% from mid range. Probably won't do that all season, but I think mid 50s is well within the kind of numbers that you see from guys like DeRozan or Durant even. From mid range, it looks automatic. Has a high release, gets it off quickly. You'd like to see him go to the rim a little bit more, but that's a nice weapon to have. When the defense is extended out to the 3-point line or collapsing on Brunson, he can just cut through the middle, and that's a very good look for us. OG Anunoby has really evolved his scoring. Great finisher. He's been bullying smaller defenders. He can post up. He can hit the midi. The pull-up game is good, and he's been more active. And then you have to talk about Josh Hart. Josh Hart is shooting the ball well, but even as much as he needs to take those threes, and it's good that he's been doing that all season, and now they're falling. There's so much that's almost the cherry on top, because everything he's done, he's getting to the rim. You hide a smaller guard on him, he's capable of getting all the way to the rim and finishing and drawing contact, or he can attack on the glass. I think his playmaking has been awesome. He's one of the guys that can really get them into transition. So there's so much to deal with on this offense, and they're starting to play together and get all of those out. And then at the end of it, if you defend all of those options, they still have multiple guys who can create an advantage in isolation. So, it's just a really, really tough offense to defend. And I think the depth, as much as the injuries have hurt, the depth has been encouraging. Jericho Sims has actually held up, I think, better than a lot of us would have expected. I'm not saying he's great. He actually played pretty well yesterday. But he's a good offensive rebounder. He was leading the rim and leading the league in defensive rim percentage. I don't know how real that is, but he certainly seems to be improved there. And then
I would pump the brakes a little bit on that. I think.
Yeah.
Look, first of all, I think we already experienced this with Cat. Like, those fucking defensive numbers are just weird.
I don't think he's the best rim protector in the league.
Yeah.
But
no, he's definitely been better, and like he's been, I think his pick and roll coverage in general has been a lot better over the last, I would say, 6 games, than anything we saw last year, or anything we saw to start the year. So that's real improvement. I'm not saying that underhandedly at all. Like, if I'm going to sit here and complain about the guy as much as I did, I think it's worth praising him when he deserves it. So yeah, he's definitely improved on that. I still think you see, like, there are times where his positioning can get wonky. And look, I don't know what to take of that. I'll be completely honest with you. That Washington game yesterday, I was just like, I don't know what to make of any of this other than that.
It's a contender against a tanking team.
Yeah, it's like a team that is built to score 190 points. It's like the fucking Death Star against Alderaan. So, yeah, I mean, I heard a million voices scream at once. But yeah, I mean, there's something to take. So even defensively, like, I thought the Knicks were not sharp defensively, but I'm also like, yeah, of course they weren't sharp defensively. Why the fuck would you be? So yeah, I just wanted to say, like, Sims, like, I definitely agree with you. I think he's played a lot better defensively. And even on Friday, and I understand why people were like, oh my God, Huck Porty played better, and this means that he needs to take Sims' minutes. While I kind of I understood that, and we talked about it after the game in the Discord, but like, while I understand that, I also think, we saw yesterday why Tibbs probably does not agree with us, because Huck Porty came in and was like not really with it. He just was not locked in. He was not executing things sharply. I don't think all of that his fault. He was in weird low lineups, and there was a lot going on there. But I thought that was like, I understood why people were saying that, but I also thought Sims was fine. I thought he was pretty good in that game. Like, I thought it was more about Huckporty played really well versus Sims didn't. Like, I didn't think it was like, wow, Sims was awful and Huckporty was so good. This is why he needs more minutes. Like, I just thought Huckporty played so well. You're like, oh my God, like he should get more minutes. But to the point, one, it's good that Tibbs saw he was playing better than Sims in that game and rolled with him. And two, I think that's like we saw again, we saw last night, in my opinion, why Tibbs will just go with Sims for right now, because you're probably going to get more volatility from Huckporty, where you'll have these amazing performances, amazing moments, but then you also have like, oh, he's a rookie from Germany. Like, this is like, yeah, like, okay, yeah, this up and down is going to be a little bit more. I think he knows what Sims is going to give him. It's kind of a known quantity. And to Tibbs' credit and Sims' credit, Tibbs, I think, is using him better in terms of what is Sims actually good at with his skill set. And he's had him switch out more. He's had him do more aggressive pick and roll coverages. So he deserves credit for that. Both of them deserve credit for that.
Yeah, I would to the point. I think the depth, it has looked bad. It's at times this season. We're still probably seeing too many minutes from the wings. But you now have two guys who have shown up to be at least serviceable in Sims and Huckporty. I think a lot of the frustration people is also he had 30 minutes and he looked so great, and then they go to nothing. That's a little bit, I get the frustration. I was frustrated about that. I thought he needed at least some minutes, and I wouldn't mind seeing Sims play next to Cat a little bit. I think the depth has looked good. Cameron Payne is starting to shoot the ball well, and he had 6 assists. I still think as like a point guard, or like making the best reads, he's a little hit or miss. And I think the Kolek Payne pairing, I'm not sure Kolek is ready for meaningful minutes, and I wouldn't mind if they're going to play Cat with the bench, going with Sims at the 4, and then you can go Dadiet, Payne, and I guess whoever the other bench babysitter is. I would rather do that, I think, than if it's between Sims and Kolek. Right now, I think Sims next to Cat deserves a look. And then we have to talk about Dadiet, right? Who was probably, people thought he was drafting stash. People thought he'd go to Westchester. He's looked, like a reasonable bench wing. Probably isn't going to do. Probably not ready to get thrown out against like Tatum and Brown yet for heavy minutes, but he's generally in the right spots. We know he can shoot. And he's big. There's a lot there. So the depth is starting to look reasonable, especially if you think about Precious and Mitch coming back, and the fact that they probably have the flexibility to get some kind of a vet at the trade deadline. A lot to be encouraged about. I think the defense is going to continue to improve. And really, if you look at the top two teams, Boston and Cleveland are these nuclear offenses, a little bit ahead of the Knicks, that are like middling on defense. So I think right now, just getting to league average on defense, I don't think that's an unreasonable goal. I think the offense is going to continue to improve. So, and especially as we get more personnel back, as some of the younger guys get more comfortable, as OG and Mikal get comfortable with each other, I think all of that is within reach.
I mean, for me, if I'm the Knicks, the goal should be, can we get to, and I'm just literally eyeballing this based on absolutely nothing other than that, I don't see how this team's defensive personnel should be better than ours. Can the Knicks get to 14th? Sacramento right now is 14th in defensive rating at 112.9. To me, there's absolutely no reason the Knicks can, and the teams in between New York, the Knicks at 21 and Sacramento at 14 rank as such. Charlotte 20th, Phoenix 19th, Denver 18th, Philly 17th, Portland 16th, Milwaukee 15th, Sacramento 14th. To me, there's absolutely no reason the Knicks cannot make up that gap. They should make up that gap. That should be the target. If you can get to, hey, we're a top 3 offense and we are slightly, very ever so slightly above league average on defense, that is basically what I think, at least for me, what I anticipated our kind of ultimate ceiling would be for this season, given our personnel. I think there's, there was always like an outlier chance they could be a top 10 defense if they XYZ things fell in place. So far, that hasn't been the case, and I don't see signs to make me think that will happen, but maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. I just want to point this out. You talked about discrepancies in the offense. So I just want to repeat this again. This year, the Knicks ranked third in offensive rating. They ranked second in true shooting percentage, and they ranked second in effective field goal percentage. They also ranked third in assists per 100 possessions. In 2022-23, the Knicks were third in offensive rating. Good job. Everybody, round of applause for the New York Knicks. They were 20th in true shooting percentage, and they were 20th in effective field goal percentage, as well as ranking a mere 27th in assists per 100 possessions. They were extremely gifted as an offensive rebounding team. They were second in offensive rebound percentage at 28.3. This year, the Knicks only rank 16th in offensive rebound percentage at 23.8. I think I'm okay with that, given a variety of factors playing in our favor. Okay, in 2023-24, so last season, the Knicks win 50 games, and they won a playoff series against Philly. They ranked.
And on that offensive rebounding note, I'll add they are expecting to get 2 pretty great offensive rebounders coming back, so it's not something that won't be in their arsenal.
Yeah. And I think it still is in the arsenal. I mean, you can see Sims crashing the glass. You see Cat.
Cat is a really good offensive rebounder. They just have him out there, so usually spacing. So,
in 2023-24, so last season, the Knicks ranked 7th in offensive rating, but they were 19th in true shooting percentage, and they were 16th in effective field goal percentage. They were the number 1 offensive rebound percentage team in the league last year at 29.4, and they were 23rd in assists per 100 possessions. So, I always think back to this article I read about offensive efficiency. This goes back to I want to say 2013-14 or 2014-15, something like that. And it was talking about how there's multiple ways to skin the offensive cat, so to speak. And I think the Knicks are showing, if you just follow them from last year or the last 2 years, really, to this season, you're seeing that there's multiple ways to field an efficient offense. And I would say the last 2 years, while I loved what that team was in terms of its grittiness, its ability to kind of, I don't want to say punch above its weight, because I think it's a disservice to the talent those teams had. But I think find a way to overcome some of your limitations in terms of actual shot making. This team, the shot making is not an issue at all. They not only is the shot making not an issue, because you have Cat at the 5, it's just it amplifies everything. It makes everything so much easier. Josh Hart, this guy is playing out of his absolute fucking mind right now. I mean, he is, I believe, I'll check this right now. I'm pretty sure right now he is still the leader in 2-point percentage in the league. I'll check it in a second, and it's going to take a little while. But, I mean, that's crazy. Think about it. Josh Hart, 6'4", and he's leading the league in 2-point percentage. That's pretty well. Yeah. So Josh Hart, right now, he's shooting 75.7% inside the arc this year. 75.7% inside the arc. He has a 65.2 effective field goal percentage. And, by the way, he's up to 33.3% from 3. If you give me those splits, I'm taking that all day, every day. I mean, if you told me that coming into the season, I'd have been like, are you on crack? Are you high? This is what he is putting up right now is crazy. He's also shooting 88% from the line. Now, do I think all that, I don't want to say that him shooting 75.7% from inside the arc is going to sustain, but it would not surprise me if he has a career high number from 2, because there's just so much more space. And not only is there more space, there's so much, the avenues for him to get to the rim are so much clearer. They're so much more open. He has way more of a runway. And you talked OG Anunoby. I mean, this guy, he's just getting dunks up now for free every game. He's just getting 50 dunks a game, it seems like. By the way, his career high prior to this from 2, Josh Hart, is 60.1 for a season. So he's well on his way. to destroying that mark. But yeah, OG Anunoby.
But it
so-
also tells you that you shouldn't expect too much regression, right? This is a guy who's always been a good finisher and always has, and he's had that creativity, a nice little floater. Yesterday he's got a little bit more to his game inside the arc too, and he can pass. He's just playing in so much better conditions that I think it's really popping. But he's always had that in his bag, finishing
Yeah.
ability and driving.
Yeah. And OG Anunoby, by the way, he has 26 dunks already this season. He actually got off to a slow start in that sense in terms of dunks, but these last couple of games he's just been having a blast. So yeah, I mean, there's just you talk Mikal Bridges, right? He's shooting amazing from mid range. Now, would I like to see him get to the rim more? Sure, and maybe draw some fouls every, couple of games at least. Yeah, that'd be nice. Would I like to see him shoot a more consistent percentage from three? Yeah, I would. All those things are true. But I don't think it's a coincidence he's shooting some of his, by far, his best in a way, his best number from mid range, because I think he's getting good mid range shots. Like, there's so many times I see him just cutting into, like, there was one yesterday, right, where the Wizards, they're like, all right, let's try a zone. He just flashes to the middle of the zone, gets a wide open free throw line jumper. Like, that's a cash shot for him. And I think he's getting a lot of good mid range jumpers on top of, yeah, he's making some tough ones too, because he's developed that part of his game. But like, it's not that crazy to me that these guys are having such awesome years inside the arc, because you kind of see the spacing, right? And you see the attention teams are giving Brunson. And I think that's the biggest thing that he's having to adapt to, because look, the guy's geared to be a scorer, right? That's his natural, like his best strength is his scoring, right? Nobody's confusing this guy for being Jason Kidd, right? As a passer or something, or hopefully not in any way. But like, he's a scorer. So his natural inclination is to want to look to score. And I think the attention he's being commanded, which has almost been exacerbated by the fact that we do have Cat at the 5. So I think teams are really, really wanting to get the ball out of Brunson's hands. It's an adaptation for him. But, I thought before the start of the season, he was going to have his best kind of assist numbers of his career. And while that hasn't necessarily been, I mean, he's up to 7.1 assists per game now after last night. So that actually would be his career high mark by a little bit. I mean, last year was 6.4. The year before was 6.5. Or yes. Oh, sorry. I'm looking at the wrong numbers. Last year was 6.7. This year, 7.1. So he's ticking up. The last couple of games, he's had 2 straight double-digit assist games. I think he had 9 on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. So you're starting to like see him lean more into that distributor mode, especially early in this Wizards game, man. I thought some of the passes he was making were phenomenal. So again, to me, they're still in the work in progress phase of the season too. We talked about it so many times, especially early in the season, when we were like, oh my God, can this team get out of its own way? 20 games in, like, that's kind of when I'm like, all right, they should really have most of this figured out. At least the major kind of pivot points for how they want to play on both sides of the ball. They should have that figured out. And, we're game 14, and I think you're already seeing signs of maybe they don't have it all figured out, but they're certainly getting there. And that involves Tibbs too. Like, to your point about the minutes, and David brought this up in our Discord, and other people have brought it up too. Like, some of this is, some of the end games issues they've had probably do have to do with fatigue and guys playing too many minutes, right, in game, and that taking a toll on you down the stretch of a game. I also think some of it is just not being familiar with each other, not having that built up kind of just like, okay, we understand what we need to do and how to play off each other, and I know what Brunson wants to do in this situation. I know what Cat wants to do in this situation. Like, having that built-in understanding of each other takes a little bit of time. I'm not saying they're there yet. I don't think that's the case, but I think there's more encouraging signs. I know that people point to, oh my God, they blew that lead against Brooklyn. Again, I can't really get mad about that. I thought that was, I just don't know what the Knicks were supposed to do in that game. I thought they were getting hosed on both ends of the floor in terms of officiating in that fourth quarter. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. But like, you saw them make a comeback against Chicago, right? They closed out that game against Philly. Not that that's that impressive, I guess now. But they closed that game against Philly in the fourth quarter strong. They closed out the fourth quarter against Chicago was strong. They just couldn't obviously seal the deal entirely. I think they closed out Brooklyn on Sunday strong. And I mean, yesterday was a joke, so who the fuck knows? But like, at least you're seeing a little bit of those examples. Like, okay, maybe they are starting to figure out late game stuff. And late game execution to me is all about understanding what you want to do, and then in a micro level, understanding as players, like, okay, what is the situation? How are teams defending us? Where do we want to go? Okay, and how do we want to go about that? So if we want to go to Cat, that's great. Where do we want to go to Cat? How do we get Cat the ball? What are his best spots? And what does Cat want, right? All those things, like, I think you're seeing that stuff kind of manifest. So I'm definitely encouraged. But yeah, like the offensive, again, like even if the overall output is similar at the end of the season, I think the way they're getting there, just purely, I'm only talking about the offensive end of the floor. The way they're getting there to me feels way more like it's like what was a Knicks fastball last year, right? The Knicks fastball last year was like, all right, Brunson do shit, and then we'll attack the offensive glass, and we'll, that's how we're going to make it happen. The Knicks fastball this year is like we have shooters, we have guys that can attack the space, get into the paint, and attack the rim, and then obviously we still have a couple of guys now that can create. And I think Cat's creation is pretty interesting in the sense of he's obviously not the raw shot creator Randall is, in terms of, okay, just tossing the ball at the elbow and let him cook. But when he's at the elbow, the space that opens up and just how that impacts everything, that's the stuff that's really encouraging.
He knows who he is at the elbow. I don't know if Randall always knew that. So
I think Randall knew who he was at the elbow, and that was probably the issue. But you see, like, I mean, every time he throws one of these dimes to a cutter from the elbow or from, that he had that baseline over the shoulder pass yesterday to OG, which is sweet. When you see that stuff, like, you totally understand the vision of how this team was put together, this roster. And, look, there's still pieces to come back here. You talked about Precious and Mitch. Deuce hasn't played the last couple of games. He'll be back. And then obviously, like, I know Landry Shamet is no great shakes, but I mean, it would be nice to have Landry Shamet just eat up like 10 to 15 minutes a night so that we can rest our wings a little bit more. And he gives you a little bit more variance, right? In terms of, okay, this is a guy that's going to get up volume threes, and he'll do it in a way that's where he's not Matt Ryan. And then obviously, we'll talk about Dadiet a little bit more, who I've been pretty encouraged by what I've seen. Although yesterday I thought defensively you could see some of why Tibbs is probably hesitant to just always throw him in the rotation. But like Dadiet is also, I don't think this guy is going to be, I don't anticipate him being a consistent part of the rotation, at least through the first half of the year. And honestly, probably not even entirely at all at this point in his career, in his first season. But like, this is definitely a guy where you see the vision and you see how he can slot in, like all, his constant movement off the ball, right? That in particular. And then you see how the Knicks are playing this year off of Cat. And then you see his size and his versatility, his ability to switch. When you kind of see those raw tools, and then you mentioned obviously 3-point shooting, which Dadiet, when his feet are set, good 3-point shooting. Dadiet, when he's a little bit not set, not so much. So once we get that all ironed out, we'll be good to go. But when you see that, like, you can kind of see the vision they're building towards. And that's pretty, I don't know, like I'll come out and I'll just flat out say this right now. I know it's only 14 games of the season. Nobody wants to hear this. I don't think the Knicks are winning the championship this year. I don't think so. I don't see it. I think they still have a lot of stuff to figure out. I think they still need to figure out better depth pieces. And I don't believe in them in a playoff series against Boston if both teams are at full strength. I don't think they have everything they need to overcome Boston. So that's just where I stand. 14 games in the season. I hope I'm wrong. But I think what is interesting to me is when you see a guy like Dadiet, right? And you kind of, okay, what does he look like in a year? And if you add that player into this rotation, now how deep is this team? And okay, now that you've done the hard work of getting your main pieces, now all of a sudden you're bargain basement hunting in free agency becomes a lot easier, right? As a sell to team, as sell to players. Like we saw this with Phoenix this year, where they were able to improve their depth, even though all they had to offer were veteran minimums because of the new CBA kind of squeezing a lot of players. And then the other part is because of that squeeze, there'll be veterans that are like, okay, well, if I just play well on this team for a year, I can up my value, then I can enter free agency next year and I can probably get a way more lucrative contract than I can get right now. So when I kind of think all of that through, I'm like, okay, I think their best years of contention come next year, the year after that. I think these next 3 years after the season, that is really when I see the Knicks being true blue contender. I think they're a contender right now. I just personally, I think they're just, I don't trust the depth. I don't think they'll be able to figure out the depth in season to the level we need to contend. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a trade for Mitch, which obviously everybody's talked about, everybody's thought about it. If you're say you haven't thought about it, you're fucking lying. But yeah, like maybe there's a move they can make in season that changes the calculus. It's possible. But either way, from what I've seen through 14 games, I'm encouraged about this season. I'm encouraged about the potential for the long-term future of this kind of nucleus as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cleveland just have an element of continuity that the Knicks don't right now. Cleveland is obviously off to a great start. They've figured out the balance between Garland and Mitchell. They have some interesting wings. I think Mobley has taken a step, and they've kind of figured out again how they want to manage the front court. And these are things that the Knicks are still figuring out against contenders, right? I still think they match up pretty well with Cleveland. But Boston has kind of perfected what they do, and it's tough to beat them in a playoff series.
They're also I know I've seen people like express a little concern about them because they've been a little lax lately. I would say that they're in extreme chill mode right now. I would not be too worried about how they look come playoff time.
Yeah, I mean they won the championship. This is a team that's more worried about June than November.
And Porzingis hasn't even played yet.
Yeah. So which his injuries would always be a thing, but they didn't really even need him last year for the most part in the playoffs. So it's tough to see that from the Knicks. But I will say this: they have more ways to attack, especially at full health, than they've ever had before. I think a year from now, maybe Dadiet is a guy not making those mistakes, right? Maybe he's a little bit more polished. I think really the thing that sticks out the most to me is just the weight room. So I think he's a decent ball handler and he's always in the right spot, but you do see that he just, the bigger.
Is he always there when you call?
But he's not, he's always on, his timing is good, right? But you think about a guy like that being potentially ready, like physically and completely understanding the scheme. And by the way, there are very few rookies who are just great team defenders. Grimes came off the bat, was a good point of attack defender as a rookie, but I mean, look at Quickly's one of the best team defenders we've had in the Tibbs era. Wasn't very good for the first half of his rookie season. So it takes time. I don't think there's anything to be concerned there, but even if they don't win, they do have this 2 or 3 year window. But you think you can see them getting better, especially Bridges. There was so much consternation. I still would like him to get to the foul line a little bit more. And the defense, we'll see just how high of a ceiling he can hit there. There's still some concerns on that end. That probably is how far this team will go, probably comes down to just how much of an impact Bridges and Anunoby can have together on defense. Anunoby's there, you can see it. Bridges has been more up and down because I'm not too worried about Bridges' offense. I don't know what he's shooting from 3 now, but he's been hitting his shots. The form still looks a little bit different. He's at 31% for the season. So
it's the above the break stuff that really concerns me. The corner looks fine to me.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd still bet on the career numbers, but I'm less worried about the offense right now. They need him and OG to really have a great impact, because you're just not going to get that from Cat and Brunson. You want to be able to play both of them, whether it's next to a center or next to Hart, as much as possible. Hart gives you a lot on defense, but he just doesn't have the ceiling that a guy like Bridges does, right? He's a solid point of attack defender, great rebounder, but ultimately you're going to need those guys to lock up their matchups. You're going to ideally want OG to be able to roam, so you want like that. That's something that the Knicks had to do against Brooklyn, right? OG is great in help defense and causing turnovers. So ideally you'd want Bridges at the point of attack, but he does not do a great job getting off of screens. And so on Friday, you saw Cam Thomas go off. But when they put OG on him, the results are much more muted. That's going to, there are all of these teams, how against Cleveland, that becomes a question, right? If you have to put OG on Mitchell, one, they still have another dynamic guard, but two, it takes him away from really having an impact as an off-ball defender. This is something the Spurs, by the way, went through a lot with Kawhi Leonard. I think there was a Grantman piece about it. There's one series where, Pop had been putting Kawhi logically on Jimmy Butler, was the best player at the time. So the Heat countered, I think it was the Heat at that time, or whatever team, I think it was the Heat, but it was whatever team Butler was on. They just had him basically stay out of the action and played 4-on-4, right? And so it turned out that Kawhi was not having as much of an impact. So moving him to that free safety help, that's what I think the Knicks would ideally like to do with OG. But Bridges will have to really improve over what he's shown defending those quick guards who are going to run a lot of ball screens. That to me, like if I see that consistently, really see those two guys hit that defensive ceiling, maybe some of that involves just switching more, that kind of thing. That would make me more optimistic about potentially going all the way this year. But figuring those things out, as we've seen with Cleveland, can take more than a season, especially when there's so many new pieces.
Yeah, I don't know. I would be. There's a lot of new pieces, obviously. I think that's. I mean, look, they made some of these trades. Like they made the Cat trade right before the season started. Right? It's like he was not even with the fucking team at the outset of training camp. Like he missed the first week of training camp, so Cat wasn't even there for that. And then like on top of that, right, you lose Shaman and Precious right before the season starts. So now you're kind of like, all right, well, I guess we're gonna have to play XYZ guys more, which happens to be Bridges, OG, Hart. Deuce has been part of that too. He's played more probably than anticipated because of that. And then yeah, like let's be real. I don't think Sims. I don't think Sims is going to be in the rotation to start the season, but he was. He has to be now, as far as Tibbs is concerned. Whether we like Huck Porty more or not, like I think Tibbs deserves the benefit of the doubt on that call, and he doesn't think so. But yeah, so like there's stuff to be like these things are gonna get back, right? Like Precious is going to get back. Shamit, we think will get back at some point. We'll see what goes on with Mitch. Mitch is the weirdest thing. I don't know what to make of Mitch because he's back, I think, with the team now. At least he's in Westchester now, which is a good sign. It seems like he's trending in the right direction as far as getting back. But it's like, do I really believe that the Knicks care about this guy long term? And even if he plays well, let's say he comes back and he plays really well, I think that makes him more likely to get traded. Like I don't think the Knicks want to hold on to this guy. And it's not because they don't think he's good. They clearly think he's good. It's because they don't trust him to stay healthy, which is fair because he does not stay healthy. He's not stayed healthy for a couple seasons in a row now, right? Like he's missed significant time multiple times over the last 2 or 3 years. Last year, probably the most discouraging in a lot of ways because he gets hurt. He comes back, gets hurt again. And then it's like, fuck. Like, and I understand. He came back for the team in a lot of ways. Probably shouldn't have come back last year. if we're going to be real. But he came back for the benefit of the team. So you got to respect that. At the same time, as the team, you've got to kind of consider what you want to do with this guy long term. And, let's say he comes back at the end of December and he's plays well, right? In January, whatever it is. You got the trade deadline coming up there, start of February. Like, that might be his best value to you as an asset, because after this season, it becomes an expiring contract. And teams then are like, okay, well, I'm only going to get 1 year out of you. Or if I want more out of you, then I got to extend you. And I don't really know if I want to do an extension with you because of your injury history. So he, to me, is the big swing piece in a lot of what determines the fortunes of the Knicks in this season, because, that's a hard thing to figure out. Like, because there's also a world where he's playing well and you're like, well, he's playing well. And let's say Philly gets their shit together. Okay, well, we might play Joel Embiid in the playoffs. And we know that Mitchell Robinson is one of the better Joel Embiid defenders in the league. It's a valuable guy to have. And to your point, I mean, to the point, about like how the Knicks offense has changed. Well, it has changed. It would be nice. It would be nice if on nights where like maybe your shot isn't going down, where you can be like, you know what? The shot's not going down tonight. We need to just generate extra possessions. We need to generate extra possessions. Oh, and you know what? We need to have an elite rim protector on the floor. We really need that right now because we're getting blitzed in the defensive end. Cat's getting destroyed at the 5, and Precious isn't holding up or whatever. It'd be nice to have that guy as an option. So, like, that's a really delicate balance to me and difficult decision for the Knicks to make in terms of, like, how, just figuring out that calculus, because this is no longer like as much as I want to be like, I don't think the Knicks are contend this year, but I'm fine with the trajectory, and I think that over the next 3 they will. I think that's easy for me to say, and I believe that, I can feel that. But there's an expectation you put your best foot forward every season, right? At this point, I don't think you can have a year where you're like, well, this wasn't really a contention year, right? Like, that's bullshit. That would be bullshit. They have to put their best foot forward each year. And, is your best foot forward this year, does that involve Mitch? Or does it involve trading Mitch for a wing or whatever it is? Like, I don't know the answer to that. I think that's the $1 million question for them to answer. And also, like, this all is contingent on Mitch coming back and being good and making this a dilemma. If Mitch comes back and he's fat and he can't play well for the first 3 weeks that he's back, this isn't even a concern. He's going to be on the roster through the end of the season because he's going to have zero trade value. He's going to have no trade value at that point. So you just got to play him and hope that he can bounce back before the end of the season. Then you revisit in the offseason. But look, these are the swing factors for them. This is what they have to figure out. And we'll see what they do, because it's not going to be. Look, this is when you have limited assets at this point. Decisions like this become more difficult to make, and they become far more important to make in terms of landing on the right spot, right? Like, it's one thing to, that entire 2021 offseason wasn't so good, but don't worry, we can dump these guys for fucking 6 second-round picks, and we'll get Brunson and whatever. And, don't worry about us. Shared a protected first for Cam Reddish. Yeah, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal, because we're going to turn that guy and another first into Josh Hart. You have more ability to pivot and adjust to missed calculations on your part when you have that full treasure chest of assets. But the Knicks don't have that anymore. They have very limited avenues to improve the roster. So landing on the correct decision is super, super paramount. And again, the Mitch piece of this all is very, very interesting to me, because I see the argument for him as, like, if he comes back and plays well, you're like, wow, is it worth it to risk it that he can stay healthy just because we're only going to use him as a part-time player, because what he does is so valuable when he is right on the floor, and he gives you a total kind of curveball, right, that is different from anything else available to you on your roster, and how he and the challenges he presents opposing teams. But it could also be the best time to fucking trade him. So I don't know. That's really interesting to me. And also, we don't even know what the fuck his trade value is.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to his trade value. If you can get a quality wing and you feel like, yeah, we don't really want to have to rely on some combination of Dadiet, like we like another wing. Maybe let's say Bridges hasn't shown out as the kind of point of attack defender you want, right? You want another athletic wing there who you can deploy and give you a little bit more versatility. I don't know that guy's going to be out there. I've seen guys like Tari Eason get mentioned. If you can get that guy, so I think that comes down to maybe the case you mentioned where Mitch comes back, he's awesome. The Knicks still feel like, well, if we can rely on Sims, if we can rely on Precious, our real issue is defending 3-point line. It's, whether it's Boston or Cleveland or Indiana, we just need to stack more wings, more versatile guys. And so this would be a better use of our resources. I'd see that, right? But even then, I don't know that there's going to be a lot of teams lining up to make that kind of a trade. Maybe Houston is potential target there. And at that point, if it's like, Grant Williams or something, that's where you're like, at that point, is it better?
Then you just don't do it then.
Yeah. So I think you'd like, I would agree with you in principle. I just
unless there's a potato famine.
What do you mean?
Because he has a sack of potatoes. He looks like one.
Oh, that one went a little bit of a reach there.
too much of a dad joke even for you?
I don't know about too much of a dad joke, but it's a little too early for me to making these kind of conceptual connections. My point is, like, I don't think you dump him just to dump him for the reasons you mentioned. That at a certain point, a guy who gives you a different look like that, whether it's, look, we need to be able to, a team can switch against us. We don't have the cleanest offense that we've been having. We want to be able to, we need to play some bully ball. We need to attack the offensive glass, right? Or there's just a team like, let's say Cleveland, that can throw multiple bigs at us. Precious is great, but him and Sims are both 6'9". We just need a little more size to deploy. I don't think it's worth it unless you get, a really, like, one of these guys. Like, you look at that Houston team, I think that's the vision. And if Bridges can just become that kind of a defender, it becomes a lot less of a necessity. But even if it's only 15-20 minutes a night, like, what Mitch gives you in terms of versatility means, like, I wouldn't just call him expendable. I wouldn't trade him for like a run-of-the-mill veteran wing. I would want, I'd want some substantial return.
Yeah. That is definitely that's the hardest kind of, how do you balance that? It's, I don't think there's a good answer to it. I think it's the type of answer that, this is why Leon Rose gets paid the big bucks, right? Like, to answer these questions in the right way, and for us to just bullshit and opine about. But yeah, I don't know. The Mitch question is, look, I feel like Mitch has been living on, he's at various points in his Knicks tenure where you're like, is he about to get traded? Is he gone after this year or whatever? And he's survived through it all somehow. So maybe we'll be sitting here at the end of the year, and Mitch will be on top of a bus going down the Canyon of Heroes with the rest of the team, and we'll be like, well, I guess that answers that. We talked a little bit about Dadiet earlier. I gotta say, I really liked what I saw from him against Brooklyn on Sunday. I thought he looked really good in those minutes. I think his defensive activity, he had one really nice possession against Zaire Williams where he had to switch onto him. Zaire tried to drive to his right. Dadiet cut it off. He spins back, takes the shot. Dadiet has a really good contest, doesn't foul him, doesn't land in his landing area, and he misses it short. But, like, you can just see how much his length and size, like, even though he's not always sure where to be defensively, he's not always crisp with his rotations, but because of just his willingness, his level of activity, like, he's not lazy. He's just sometimes a little slow in understanding where he needs to go. but given his level of activity and then that size, like he's just kind of a distracting player for guys. You can already see that they're not comfortable shooting over him when he's in position to contest. You also mentioned like he needs to get in the weight room a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I think you can see that the play that I'm pretty sure it got him yanked in the fourth quarter against Brooklyn, where he actually he's in the right spot. He sees Zaire crashing the corner. He gets between him and Zaire, and the shot has gone up. I forgot who shot, maybe Cam Johnson. Doesn't really matter. He's in between them, and he gets his body there, but he can't really hold him off, or doesn't really hold him off. And Zaire gets the offensive rebound, and Tibbs calls his timeout right after that. I think they fouled him, so whatever. So he goes on offensive rebound. All right, Tibbs calls timeout. I think Dadiet came out right after that. But those are the things, like you see, like the good. Like there's really a lot of good there, and look, he makes. I've seen a lot of good rotations. I've seen moments like yesterday. I thought in pick and roll coverages, he has a tendency, and screen navigation is always hard for players like him, right? Because he's a bigger guy. It's easier to get caught in a screen. We see this with even OG has moments where he struggles getting over screens. That's probably one of the best wing defenders in the league, if not the best wing defender in the league. So it's not crazy for him as a young player to struggle with that. But you can see his issues there. And then, you can see at times, I don't know if it's like an unwillingness to get physical, but it's almost like he doesn't realize how, I mean, you stand him next to OG Anunoby right now. Like the physical dimensions they're not that far off. I mean, he's 6'8", I think he's 215 or he's listed out right now. And he's got no muscle definition at all. Like he's got none right now. He's so far off from what he can be, but what he already is showing you is so encouraging. It's hard not to get carried away, honestly. It's really hard, especially when in those moments where he's doing the good things, you're like, oh shit. Like, like he makes those first 2 threes yesterday. And I'm like, get this guy on the floor for 20 minutes a night. Like, let's just see it. But I think it's right to bring him along slowly because he still has a lot to learn in terms of how to use the physical tools he has. He took a terrible shot yesterday where he had
kicked out of the three. And
he had an open three at the top of the key, and he had just hit 2. So it's like, just fucking take the 3. He pump fakes. He can't get to the rim yet, right? Because when he drives left, his handle is nowhere good enough to get to the rim, especially driving left. So then he pulls up for this, like you mentioned, like an airball elbow jumper.
I think that was a predetermined. I think he was like, I've made 2. Let me anticipate the closeout and beat them. He predetermined that, right? So that's young.
Yeah, player. No, it's exactly. But that's the stuff where I'm like, okay, well, that's why Tibbs won't trust you right now. That's like as soon as I saw that shot, I was like, in Tibbs' head, he's like, terrible shot, can't have that. This is why you need to stay after practice for 6 hours. But like I think if they keep playing him exactly how they're like, play him 10 minutes a night, 12 minutes a night, something like that, I'm fine with that because I think it gives him valuable experience on the floor. I think especially when you put him in lineups with 2 of McCall, Bridges, and Hart, any 2 of those 3, I think he's protected, and his ability to switch is actually leveraged well in those spots, right? Because I don't mind him switching at all. Like I really don't. Even yesterday, I know he fouled somebody on a switch, but I thought that was more of like, I mean, it wasn't like it wasn't a terrible foul or something. It wasn't like he got totally blown by and whatever. It was just sometimes that happens. But that ability to switch is significant. And if he can just knock down threes at a proficient rate, we don't need him to shoot 50%, but if he can be like a 37% guy, he's going to require teams to at least honor him a bit out there. So I'm way more encouraged by what I've seen from him probably than any other rookie, even Huckporty, because I think what Dadiet can do is so, especially with the guys we have on this team that can protect him, right? Especially you have Brunson, even Payne last night. We should probably talk about Payne. He had a really good game yesterday. Like you and Cat, obviously. So Brunson and Cat, and then you have guys that can kind of like keep him in a very role playery role offensively, where it's like just shoot the threes, occasionally attack a closeout, keep the ball moving, don't do much else. And then, as I mentioned, defensively, of guys that can kind of protect him. And, again, if we don't even have Precious back or Mitch back, those guys will help too in terms of protecting him and us in general defensively. Like I'm very encouraged by what I see from him. You see the vision with him, and I think it's not just that you can see the vision. It's okay. Let's just say all he does is hit the kind of like very straightforward vision we have of him. That's great. That's an awesome pick at at pick 25 in a draft that was considered poor by almost everybody's judgment. But then you kind of sometimes you're like, but what if he can ever figure out how to dribble? And what if he figures out how to leverage his size? And what if you can kind of talk yourself into I don't know. Defensively, I doubt he'll ever hit the trajectory that OG has because he's one of the best defenders in the league and obviously one of the best wing defenders in the league. But can he hit a similar type of trajectory offensively? I don't think that's very outrageous at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't want to judge the handle too much until I really see what it looks like when he's strong. I think there's some fluidity there, good hand-eye coordination. In terms of defense, though, I think the ceiling is pretty high. OG is just kind of a one of one, right?
Yeah.
But what are the key components? I mean, we sit here and obsess about techniques. So much of it is effort, right? I mean, look at it's a funny name to bring up here, but Tim Hardaway Jr. is actually playing pretty well on defense this year.
Tim Hardaway Jr. is?
Yeah, someone was like, he has the best. I've never seen someone improve so much as a defender at 32, 33, or have their best defensive season at 32, 33. But my point is effort is a lot of it, right? So he has that. Dadiet clearly has that. The motor has never been a question. Constantly gets rave reviews on how coachable he is. Obviously, the tools are there, right? And the lateral agility has been really impressive. He can move his feet and stay with guys. And he can do multiple contests. He can get his hand on balls. But he can generate deflections, those kind of things. OG is just OG, I think, is more physically gifted than Dadiet, which is not a slight at Dadiet. OG is 7'2" wingspan. Dadiet is, I think, sub 7 foot. I mean, he's big, but that's just you see it in the passing lane, right? OG just vacuums up balls. But
does he?
Yeah, you can just see he's everywhere, right? So I think to your point, but I think a very, very good defender, a guy, I don't think Otto Porter was that great of a defender, but that's the kind of outcome that seems pretty reasonable for Dadiet, pre-injury Otto Porter.
I know people will take this as an insult, but could he just be locked in J.R. Smith on defense? Because I always thought J.R. Smith was fine on defense when he was in the right position. He was just such a space cadet off the ball that you were why are you not in the right position? But he was switchable, right? He was a guy who could switch across a lot of positions. He was strong for his size, and Dadiet is bigger than him. So I don't want anybody to take that as an insult. I actually thought J.R. Smith was a fine defender. He just was often not in the right place. But if Dadiet can just lock in, be in the right place, and then at his size, and you mentioned the fluidity, this is a guy you could potentially see being able to at least switch 2 to 4, if not 1 to 4.
Yeah, and the thing is, the trade-off is, right, you lose quickness as the guys get bigger, but you also gain that kind of length, right? Do you want him running around with Trae Young around 1,000 screams? Probably not. But if it's isolation against a guard, it seems like he has the tools there to hold up. So I mean, yeah, just one of those long 3-and-D guys. It feels pretty projectable because, he just there's a high floor in terms of the shooting ability. It looks like we'll see. I mean, we saw Landry Fields shoot 40% from 3 as a rookie, and then all just was downhill. So you can never be too sure, but there's a strong baseline. And to your point, there is a pretty good, I mean, if he really, really locks up on D, there is maybe an all defensive potential there. If not, though, it seems pretty like he's very projectable with a solid floor as like a rotation player. I think I'd be pretty surprised at this point if he just ends up out of the league or doesn't make it through his rookie contract without becoming a solid rotation player.
I would go even further. I would say I'd be surprised if this is not like I'd be shocked if he doesn't get a second contract, like a legit second contract, not like a Cam Reddish. Oh, we'll give you a 2-year veteran minimum with a player option. Like, no. Like,
do you think he's better than Kevin Knox?
I think he is at least more coordinated than Kevin Knox.
Yeah, so there's a lot to like there, and the work ethic, right? So, will he be able to create on his own? I think is the big question. And like I said, like going left for sure, it's a weakness, but I think some of it is just physical weakness. So it's tough for me to kind of parse that out. But it's also just there are very few guys. It's funny, like every time there's a 6'10" guy who can dribble a little bit, they're like, oh, it's Kevin Durant. It's tough.
Especially funny because Kevin Durant couldn't even really dribble that well.
Wow, dude, that is peak haterade.
It's facts, only facts.
There's always Steph can't shoot very well either, right?
No, Steph can shoot. Durant just can't dribble that well. It's fine. He's fucking 6'10". People act like he's a point guard. He's got point guard handles.
I mean, he has moves.
When people say that, they're like, oh, he's got point guard handle. It's like, what are you fucking watching? No, he doesn't. That's why Chris Paul used to like fucking rip him constantly.
Yeah, no, he could be turnover prone on that. But so I mean, that's just not a good outcome to count on with most 6'9", 6'10" guys. But even without it, right? Just what we described without that, if all he is like, 6'9" Courtney Lee on offense with that defense, that's still a pretty substantial second contract guy.
Just get rid of the pump fake threes into long twos.
Yeah. Which, like I said, I think like going back and looking, you'll probably see that he's like, I made 2 twos. This is how that's how guys react, right? Like they're gonna close out on me, and they didn't, and then it just looked bad. And in general, like it's just he's gonna be a guy who struggles when he doesn't have a pretty clean path to the rim because of the physical immaturity at this point.
The ironic thing is, like, if they were playing a better defensive team, that logic may have applied. Like, because they were playing a terrible defensive team, it didn't work. Because they were like, "Oh yeah, no, you can have the 3." And they're like, and he's like, "Wait, you're not going to close out to me? What's going on here?" That Wizards team is just we talked about it a little bit this morning in our Discord. I think their young talent is fine. Bilal didn't even play yesterday. He's obviously looked good this year. I liked what I saw from Carrington last night, as far as like you can see the vision, you see the tools and the size and all that stuff. Obviously, there's the shooting, and you can just kind of see what the idea of him is. Sar is far away, and that was known when he was drafted, so it's not really a big concern. He's got time on his side, and he was supposed to be a project. You can't teach that height. You can't teach that wingspan. Hopefully you
could. I mean, I was saying this, like he affected quite a few Cat shots, and I know Cat had 24 in 24 minutes. It was a noticeable difference, him going against Valanciunas versus him going against Sar. I think he's already a good defender, and when Cat started to body him, you see, he's 19 against one of the best post players in the NBA, but like a lot of Cat's drives, like you saw, like he's missing these layups because he had to adjust just a little bit. And I've been impressed with Sar, certainly on defense, and the jumper looks clean.
Yeah, he's got to figure out offense. The shot looks clean, but man, he's so bad inside the arc. It's like every time the guy's at the rim, I'm like, you're gonna miss this, and that's gonna be like, it's gonna fucking blow my mind how you missed this layup. But like you understand the vision with him and whatever, right? You kind of get all the young guys they picked and why they picked them, whatever. Their veterans, man, are so Jordan Poole and Kuzma especially. Dude, this guy is so absurd on this team. Like, they have the right concept as an organization, I think, finally, where it's like, okay, we're rebuilding. We're going to draft this nucleus of young players, and we're going to, okay, Denny Avdia, good player we picked that this current front office picked, but the previous one did, really not going to be part of our future. He's just not on our timeline. Let's trade him. Let's get draft capital. Like, I like that. I think that was a good move. That was a good move for both teams, actually. So I like that move, right? I like the idea of let's get some like vets around these young guys so that they're not always asked to do too much, and we don't need to, like, on nights where they're getting their ass kicked, we can pull them. We don't need to expose them to that. Whatever. They have some veteran support. I think that's the right idea. The problem is when you have fucking Kuzma and Jordan Poole as two of these veterans out there doing God knows what. Like, I don't know what the hell either of them was doing last night, especially not Kuzma. Kuzma was he took a pull-up three in transition from the top of the key that grazed the net. And shout out to Mike Breen, who I don't know if he's ever played basketball before, actually, after this, but he said, you can't call that an air ball because it grazed the net. And I was like, no, that's definitely an air ball, bro. That's 100% an air ball. He's a joke. I'm sorry. He's not a serious player, and he's not going to be. It's possible that Kuzma, I think he just needs to get the fuck out of there, man. This is such a bad situation for him, and he's such a bad type of player to have on a team like this because he's just going to jack up bullshit. Nobody can really say anything to him, right? Like Alex Sarr is going to say something to him. Bub Carrington, who looks like he's 5 years old. Like Bilal Coulibaly, who somehow looks younger than Bub Carrington. Like, these guys are Tyshawn George. Like, these are, what are they going to say to him? There's nothing. There's nothing they're going to say to him. They
need Valanciunas to enforce that. That guy looks like someone I wouldn't fuck with.
Yeah, no, and Valanciunas. Notice I didn't name him. Good veteran to have. He's a serious player. I thought last night, like, not that he was great, but he
was bad on defense, but his offense was good.
But even when he's bad on defense, it's bad in like, oh, you're just bad on defense. It's not bad like you're doing the
too slow to guard Cat.
It's not like you're doing the dumbest shit ever. Like, Kuzma actively does stupid shit. Jordan Poole actively does stupid shit. That's the stuff that kills you on a rebuilding team because it sets bad examples, and if you're a young player and that shit, and you don't see that stuff being reined in by your coach or your organization or whatever it is, it reinforces bad habits to you. Now, I want to be clear. To my knowledge, Kuzma and Poole, these are not guys that are unprofessional in the sense of they're not putting in the work off the court. Like, they work, to my knowledge, in practice, on their games, whatever. So I'm not saying they're bad examples in that sense. But on the court, they're absolutely terrible examples for these young guys, especially when they're not being checked. And even a guy like Brogdon, who I think is not, he's not like a bad guy to have around, but he's always been very strong-headed. He's somebody who has clashed with almost all of his coaches. That's a weird, like, I get why they did that. That was kind of the cost of doing business for the Avdia deal. But I'd be trying to get him a fast ticket out of town ASAP. As soon as he shows a pulse for like a month, give me a couple seconds and he's yours. I would want to get it.
You don't think they should go for RJ Barrett for Kuzma?
I mean, honestly, if they could do that, they should do that because RJ Barrett's better than Kyle Kuzma at this point right now. But yeah, I don't. That's like, that stuff was weird. And then I just don't understand anything they did with Tyus Jones because they traded for him as part of the fucking Porzingis deal, and then they just held on to him all season. And then he walked for nothing. So they got nothing out of that part of it, which was, in a lot of ways, the sell of the deal was like, all right, well, we'll get him. And then and I don't know. I think they have the right idea. I think they've fucked up some of the steps of this, right? They took on the Jordan Poole deal. That was like, they took that on. They're like, all right, yeah, we'll take that on for a lottery protected 2030 pick. And there's still 3 years left on this.
That was the old front office, wasn't it?
No, that was them. That was the new front office. And I understand the logic. It was a decent gamble, right? Like, all right, Jordan Poole's broken in Golden State. We'll bring him here. Nobody's going to pay attention to us. We can get him right, and he can put up numbers, then we'll flip him later. I understand the logic. I defended it, I'm pretty sure, at the time. But so far, like, you have to be judged on results of stuff too, and the result so far has been bad. And I just do not like these. I really do not like Kuzma and Poole on that team with those young guys. I think they need to get the fuck out of there ASAP. And I'm not trying to like, oh my God, they should be super concerned about this, but it's definitely something that needs to be handled.
Yeah, I thought they've done a decent job reining Poole in. Yesterday he took what? He took 7 shots yesterday, right? Bob Carrington took more than twice as many. Kuzma took 11 shots. I think that's not to say that there aren't, but I think they've done a good job from what I've seen of Washington of reining in Kuzma and Poole, kind of their like baser instincts. Poole has been shooting the ball reasonably well. I think he made a couple nice passes. He's going to have a few annoying possessions, but I think they have, from what I've seen, done a good job of limiting those things. And I don't think right now I don't see it impacting Bub or Kispert had a really nice game. It seems like he tends to play well against the Knicks. He's a pretty solid rebounder. He seems like another solid piece, if nothing else. So, kind of, I think that risk is always there to your point, and definitely on defense, they're both very unserious players. But I don't really see it at this point impacting those guys. And there's, and I think, a guy that brings, he didn't play too much yesterday, but it'll be interesting to see if he can bring a little bit of a steadying hand. That's Malcolm Brogdon, right? Who, he's past his prime, but, is a vet who's played on winning teams, knows, can kind of bring some of that maturity. And I think, Poole is probably, you probably have to give up an asset to trade him. And at this point, I would much rather just deal with whatever, if you have to bench him, you bench him to wake him up. But I would rather deal with that than have to try to attach an asset to Jordan Poole. But I would imagine there will be some team that'll be interested in Kuzma. He's got 2 years after this one. So maybe not this trade deadline. I would imagine you could find a buyer during the offseason. It'll be $21 million, and it's a descending contract. And again, I don't see, like, I guess I would be worried about all the things you mentioned, but I don't see it impacting them right now in the way that that one would believe. But that's obviously a risk.
Yeah. We'll see. I don't know. Like the Kuzma thing, the one thing that really annoys me though, that they about the Kuzma piece, they had a trade agreed to with Dallas last year. It was agreed. 100%. This is on the record. It was agreed. And then they went to Kuzma and told him that they had this deal in line. And he's like, well, I'd rather not be traded there. And then they honored his request. I'd have been like, that's cool, dude. Pack your bags. You're going to fucking Texas. Like, get the fuck out of here. What are you doing here? You're going to get a first-round pick for this guy, and you're not, like, you're giving him the option? What the fuck has Kyle Kuzma done to get the option? Like, what is he, some franchise legend? You're like, oh, no, we got to make sure Kuz is happy with this trade. Give me a fucking break, dude. Like, he's going to get mad that you're going to trade him to Dallas to go play with fucking Luka and Kyrie? Really? Like, no, it's not going to happen. Just make the trade. If you agreed to the trade, right? This is my issue with it. If you agreed to the trade, your logic as an organization was this trade, the return is beneficial to you. At that point, why do you give a fuck what Kyle Kuzma wants? He is just there. And you paid him, right? You paid him to be a trade chip. He was a trade chip, which you were about to receive assets for. And then you don't make the trade. I don't know. I have a really big issue with that. It would have been sweet for them, man. They could have gotten rid of Kuzma, and they would have got, and they had already moved, and they moved Gafford at that time too to Dallas. That'd been great. Get off two guys that are clearly not part of your future, and you get assets for both of them. That'd have been wonderful. Instead, they just do the Gafford piece and let Kuzma hang out. And I gotta imagine Kuzma's like stock right now is worse than it was at that point last year. I don't know. I thought that was really stupid. Going on to really stupid, a team I would like to talk about. Philadelphia 76ers. How about them, huh? They're killing it. The 76ers are now, we just talked about how bad the Wizards are. I think they have the Wizards have the worst net rating in the league at minus 14.3. Pretty bad, right? You did like really bad. Philadelphia 76ers have the third worst net rating in the league, minus 9.2. Minus 9.2. They don't do anything well. They are the worst offensive team in the league right now. They have the worst offensive rating in the league, 105.3. They have a middling 14. They're 14th in defensive rating, 114.5. They are second worst, so 29th in effective field goal percentage. They are, where are they? They're 28th in true shooting percentage. They're just really bad. Like they're awful. I don't know what else to really say. They're terrible, and this is not even like a holy shit. They've just played a murderer's row of teams. They have the 12th strongest strength of schedule so far this season, based on or according to Basketball Reference. I always think strength of schedule is kind of a bullshit metric, though. Just completely honest. Like the NBA is weird, and people only seem to selectively apply it. So based on strength of schedule, you want to know who has the here's based on strength of schedule. Here's who have the second, third, and fourth easiest strength of schedules in the league so far this year. You ready?
Yeah.
Minnesota, Boston, Cleveland. Memphis has the 7th easiest strength of schedule. The Knicks have the 8th. Detroit has the 9th. I just think strength of schedule is bullshit. I don't know. I never really cared about it. But either way, they've been terrible. And the main thing for me is this. Yes, they've had injuries. I know Joel Embiid is just coming back. But I thought he was in the best shape of his life. He's played 3 games now, and he still looks fucking awful. He can't move. Paul George has been okay. He's been fine. He looked really good against us. He looked terrible last night. He doesn't get to the rim anymore. Everything is a jumper. Everything is a jumper. And then obviously Maxey is out right now. He's injured. Paul George, by the way, he's played 7 games. 51.8 true shooting right now. Not great. Not great. And Maxey's out injured. He didn't look great to start the year. I know, again, Embiid and Paul George were out at the time that he was playing. I'm sorry, the guy's supposed to be a superstar, allegedly. Like, I think it's okay to hold him to that standard. He was not playing at that level, obviously. He wasn't even playing at a star level. Forget that. And then all these offseason acquisitions, Caleb Martin, Andre Drummond, who's been who could have predicted Andre Drummond is actually not good at basketball?
I thought if you let watch Andre Drummond play, and you're going to be saying, do Paul George and Embiid even need to come back for the playoffs? Because he's like that.
Yeah. And then, Lowry looks washed. Yabusele's been okay, fine for what he is, but he's obviously going to be overtaxed because the rest of these guys are not good. The one bright spot for them, and I do mean this, is what's his name? Jared McCain. Jared McCain's been really good as a rookie. I don't know what it says that a contender's one lone bright spot of the year is their rookie playing well. That would normally be very encouraging, right? Wow, we're a contender, and the kid we picked 20th overall is playing really well. That's awesome. Wow. Except it sucks because everybody else is terrible on this team right now. This was the risk with Paul George, and I will say this. The Clippers caught a ton of shit for letting him walk. Ton of shit. I actually was fine with it. And you can go back and listen I don't know why anybody would want to do this. If you want to go back and listen to offseason pods we did. I liked the Clippers offseason. I thought I was fine with it. Let Paul George walk. I liked getting Derek Jones Jr. I liked the guys they added. I think they needed to get more athletic, get stronger defensively. Everybody they did that, right? Derek Jones Jr., Chris Dunn. I thought both those two guys in particular were really solid additions. And they caught a lot of shit for that. Is it possible they maybe had an idea of something that we didn't? That Paul George, the cliff was coming? Because it might be here. It might be. I mean, this was the risk with him, right? He's 34 years old. He's played a shit ton of NBA basketball. He's played 874 career regular season games. He's played 29,396 minutes in the regular season. In the playoffs, he's played 114 games and played 4,444 minutes. So he's played about 33,000 plus minutes 33,300 plus minutes in his career, and about 1,000 games. Like, he's out. I mean, obviously, we all know his most devastating injury back in Indiana, but he's somebody who's had injury throughout his career, that had to deal with stuff. Joel Embiid, we watched him in the. I don't know. I'm sure you watched the Olympics, but like when I watched the Olympics, I wasn't just like, oh, he's out of shape. I was like, this looks not good. Like, he doesn't look like he can move. Even in our playoff series last year, although he was effective, didn't you feel at times you were like, this doesn't look great? Like, his movement does not look good right now. He's never been a great, oh, wow, his conditioning is so elite type guy. They gassed that up in the offseason. And then for him to come back and look the way he did against us, like, I know Stan Van Gundy was making all kinds of cute excuses of like, well, what can you expect? It's first game back. There's nothing that prepares you for this. The guy was like dead on his feet after the first 3 minutes of the game. You know, I'm sorry. That doesn't speak to me about a guy who's been busting his ass and saying as best condition as he could while he was, you know, sitting out with whatever injury he was dealing with. Then on top of it, you have the mysterious injury that lasted way longer than we expected with him that he's coming back from. He's wearing a fucking brace that looks like, you know, that fucking like that fucking armor that Gronk used to wear on his arm.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like on his knee. And I don't know, like their depth, the depth again, like this was supposed to be the big thing, right? Oh my God, Daryl Morey. Not only did he land Paul George, but he also, look at all the depth pieces he got. I mean, this depth looks pretty bad, man. None of these guys are able to elevate in a situation where the team needs them to. And if we can be honest for 5 seconds, were you super high on Jared McCain as a prospect coming in?
I didn't watch enough of him, to be honest.
What were your just like initial thoughts though when you had seen him?
I thought he was a skilled guard. If the shot translated, like there's a lot of talent there. It's just with those small guards, it could go. You know, you could become Steph Curry or, you know, a great player, or you can be. I didn't see him being able to be like a guy like quickly who could contribute in many other ways, even if the high end creation outcome didn't come. But I thought like you can, like, between him and Dillingham, for example, right? Who's to say which one is going to be better? Like with those small guards, it's a little bit of a crapshoot always, but the requisite skill seemed to be there.
Yeah. So just to bring it back, yeah. So like, I actually have a weird comp for him. Not even that weird. I kind of think he's kind of Brogdon-y a little bit, his game a little bit. But anyway, so the Jared McCain is the one guy I think anybody would be like, yeah, no, he's holding up his end of the bargain and then some. But Paul George is back right now. I know Maxi's out, but you would say, I think we both agreed Jared McCain's been really, really good for what you'd expect. So
Yeah, for sure.
Jared McCain's been really good. Even though Maxi's out, Jared McCain's been really good. Paul George is back, Embiid is back. All this elite depth that they signed should be able to slot into decent roles now around these three and function. And none of it is functioning. None of it is good. Even if the stars are not good, they still have gravity, right? Which is the thing about stars, is they can impact the game even when they're not playing well individually. Well, none of those guys are leveraging any of that. So right now, every piece of this offseason, maxing out Paul George, extending Embiid for whatever fucking reason they did that, and then signing all these various depth pieces that we were told, oh, they're so wonderful. Look at this A+ offseason Daryl Morey had. It all looks terrible.
They got Caleb Martin. He's going to shut down Cat.
and the other piece of this I think really warrants mentioning. They what the thing I think that really is impressive about the Knicks have done, right, since Leon Rose has come in, is they have valued the margins consistently. They care about the margins. They have nailed margin signings. And by nailing margin signings and finding marginal value, even in small ways, right, in terms of like when the first offseason they come in, they do all these fucking bullshit transactions to start stacking second round picks and second round picks and second round picks. Well, what does that allow you to do? Oh, well, our offseason signings sucked. We got to dump them so we can sign Jalen Brunson and Isaiah Hartenstein. Okay, that's what that allows you to do. So when you care about that margin stuff, it has incremental value that can help you year on year on year. Daryl Morey doesn't care about marginal value. He doesn't. He does not care about marginal value. He cares about getting stars, and then when he gets his stars and he has them in place, then all of a sudden he's willing to start, oh, okay, let me get this guy, let me get that guy, I'll sign this he treated last year basically as like we just want to have some functional pieces around Joel and Maxey, but we're not really trying to compete this year. Like they were not trying to compete last year, right? They were just like, no, our plan is cap space and we're going to make it happen this offseason. So they did basically nothing with that roster value last year. The one thing I guess they did is you can say they found Kelly Oubre and then they gave him a long-term deal. And guess what? Turns out Kelly Oubre maybe just had a nice year last year. Maybe not somebody you want to, Kelly Oubre, more of a one-night stand guy, not somebody you want to marry. But yeah, like I just think this is an embarrassment. I don't even know what else to say other than that. Like I've seen a lot of people bitch about Nick Nurse, and I'm sure he deserves blame for a variety of things, but this is just not a good roster. Like they did not get good depth. And if your roster at this point is basically like, well, Jared McCain's awesome and Tyrese Maxey's going to be back at some point and Joel Embiid will hopefully look right and Paul George will hopefully get back to because once these guys are right, he'll be able to just slot in. Like, I don't know. To me, that's not encouraging. I don't think this team is a contender. I didn't think they were a contender coming into the season. And I haven't seen nothing to change that. I mean, I've only seen things to reinforce that viewpoint. I guess they can make a trade. They do have 4 tradable firsts still, so kudos to them. But I don't know. I just think this is a huge embarrassment. And honestly, I think they should be getting criticized. And then forget them as a team. Like Daryl Morey specifically should get way more criticism than I've seen at all of him, at least in terms of NBA media circles.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It is funny to laugh at the Sixers. But, this is, if you think about Shaq, right? Shaq turned 30 in 2002. And that was kind of the last Shaq year. And then that's when the decline started, right? If you look just on basketball ref, I think there was a Darko chart someone showed, kind of imposing Shaq and Embiid, and this is right around when you started to see Shaq go from superhuman, really, to the decline started. Right, he had he in 2003 they had the whole the Karl Malone and Gary Payton experiment that didn't work. He averaged what had been a career low at that point, 21 points. Had a resurgence in Miami for a year. Actually finished second in MVP voting that year. But you can see. Around this age, it becomes tougher. And it's fair to say that, like, there's a lot of, I don't think Shaq had quite the injury. He came out of shape a lot of times. He didn't have quite the injuries that Embiid does. And it's fair to ask if, the mobility looks very diminished. We saw that in the playoffs. The one play that keeps coming to mind is OG had that dunk in game 6 on Embiid. It was a great dunk, and OG is a good athlete, but Embiid didn't even contest, right? He got put in a poster, and there's nothing he can do about it. It's and that's you can't just lose that guy, right? Everyone was talking about Maxey last year, but it shows you that, like, Maxey isn't the guy who can just carry a team, right? You need more than that, and the bet on Paul George is not working out so far. There's health issues. He increasingly looks like his next employer may not be in the NBA as much as inside the NBA. But it's only been 7 games. The guy has a long track record. He's made All-Star games the last 2 seasons. He'll get into shape and all of that. But it's there's a reason I felt like the Knicks were better than this team coming into this season. And they've, I think it's been borne out. Do I think the Sixers get back to the play-in? Probably. I don't think this is ultimately as bad a team as it looks right now. But a lot of those depth signings, just frankly, we talked about how long it's taken the Knicks to adjust. It's not like the Sixers, Caleb Martin and all those guys have seamlessly fit in either. So they're going to be an interesting team. But the other thing is you can't. The thing is this, right? If it takes, we talked about this, right? Even if the Knicks said this year we want to ideally make Eastern Conference Finals, but to actually win the whole thing, you need that continuity. You maybe need one more piece that we just don't have yet. The Knicks have that luxury with a guy like Embiid on the other side of 30 now. Every year, and given his injury problems, and your second player, you now have George too. You've invested so much money. They do not have the luxury to punt on a year, but they might have to, right? Because right now they're just bad while trying to not be bad. And Embiid is not getting healthy. He doesn't look physically ready. It's a difficult situation to be in. So even when a couple games ago, and the Knicks were 500. Let's say the Knicks finished in the low 40s and wins this year, right? And make the plan. It would be a big disappointment. I imagine there's no way that gets Tibbs fired, but I would imagine going into the offseason, they'd be like, hey, buddy, we gave you the extension, but this, like, last year, first year, and a lot of injuries, fine. This year, but it wouldn't be like they wouldn't have to do a fire sale, right? It wouldn't be some disastrous season. The Sixers, like, if you don't finish with a top 2 or 3 seed, you don't make it past the second round this year. That is disastrous. And frankly, they just, given the age and everything else that they have dealing with, it's a tough spot to be in, and they haven't left themselves much flexibility. But I mean, and unless you want to trade a guy like McCain, which I don't think they should. I think you probably, because you're going to want to need that asset, you don't have anymore, and you're probably going to want some young talent if and when this experiment doesn't, comes to its end.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think it's 13 games. They're 2-11. Maybe they turn it around. I mean, you would at least hope they turn it around to be like a play-in team, right? Like,
which I still would expect.
I would expect it. I would expect it. The thing, I think even myself probably underestimated this. There's just so much disaster potential with this team, because forgetting the role player stuff that they missed on or whatever. Their two of their stars are constantly hurt, Embiid and Paul George. And Embiid, I mean, look, at least the Paul George one, look, you basically had to sign him last summer, right? If you can get him for just cap space, they had no other option. They had to do that. I get it. I mean, I don't actually truly believe there's no other option, but I kind of, if you want to just say that and, frame it that way, I'm fine with that. But to me, they pretty firmly, they just, it's what it is. Like this is the option they took. This is the course they took, and we'll see what happens. But there's just a lot of disaster potential here. And while I would expect them to at least finish in the plan, I think there's a world where, like, the Embiid extension itself, I mean, that piece of it, again, I just don't understand it. I'll never understand it. He had 2 years left on his contract. Did you need to, like, you had no concerns? You had no concerns at all, to the point that you were just like, no, we got to give him his full max extension right now. Because if it was me, I would have waited. I would have waited. Because I'd have been like, yeah, we want to extend you. We'll wait till next offseason. We'll do it then. We'll do it next year. What's he going to do? Demand a trade? Okay, demand a trade. We still have you under contract for 2 years. And you're Daryl Morey, right? He doesn't mind. What is this thing? He doesn't mind getting uncomfortable, or the fuck it is. Okay, if you don't mind getting uncomfortable, get fucking uncomfortable. That seems to be your thing, right? Okay, well then do it. I don't know. I think he got played. That's what I think. All right, let's finish up with this. The Knicks go on a road trip now.
I did want to ask, sorry, when we're talking about the margins, real quick before.
Yep.
What do you think about the fact that the NBA is investigating Rick Brunson getting a pay raise to work around the salary cap?
I don't know if I could care about something less.
But why? It does seem like they're getting targeted, right? Is it the Knicks say that they have disagree with the front office on certain issues, and that's what's creating this? But I think Brunson makes the same salary that Johnny Bryant did, and he would.
Yeah, that's what they're reporting, and if that's the case, I don't really know what their argument is. I understand. I actually get why the league would at least look into it, given, okay, if you want to say Brunson took a discount or whatever, fine. So you want to make sure they're not circumnavigating the cap, fine. But if he's making the same amount as Johnny Bryant did, I don't know. I don't really see how that's like. It
And
doesn't
it's
really
certainly not enough to make up the difference in salary, right? It's just assistant coach's salary. It's not.
It's also somewhat insulting to. It's also just somewhat insulting to assume that like Brunson would take this extension just so that his dad could get that. Like, I don't know. I find that a little bit insulting.
A few boxes of ZD.
Yeah. How many boxes of ZD is he down to us? So yeah, I think it's embarrassing. I don't see that investigation reaping anything of value. All right, so the Knicks go on a 5-game trip here. Man, it seems like the Knicks have played a lot of road games so far this season. They will be at Phoenix on Wednesday, so tomorrow. They will be at Utah on Saturday. They'll be at Denver on Monday. They'll be at the Mavericks on Wednesday. And then they close out the road trip with an NBA Cup game the day after Thanksgiving at noon, a noon matinee on Black Friday. Just want to read these out. By net rating, Phoenix is a minus 1.6 net rating. That's 18th in the league. Utah is a minus 11.3 net rating. That's 29th in the league. Denver has the 14th best net rating in the league at plus 0.6. That's their numbers are just very, very weird because Jokic missed a couple of games and it's weird. I don't know what to make of them. And then obviously Charlotte is their 23rd in net rating at minus 5.3. And then Dallas, who I forgot to mention. And this to me, this game, I'm very, very excited to watch that game. Dallas has a plus 4.0 net rating. That is 9th in the league. They're 7-7, but their Pythagorean win-loss is 9-6. They have a top 10 offensive rating, 116.7 offensive rating, and they have the 13th best defensive rating at 112.7. I think we'll learn a lot about this team on this trip. I'm excited for it. Do you have any thoughts going into this trip about what you expect?
Yeah. I think, I mean, there's a lot of good matchups here. Against the Suns, you have some talented wing scorers. That's going to, we said, I would imagine, I've said that I want to see more from Bridges on that end, but it'll also be an interesting challenge for Anunoby, dealing with Booker and Durant, and Beal has had a return to form this year. So how do the Knicks, because this is a team that can put up points. This is also a team that probably doesn't have any answer for Cat. I think there's going to be some fireworks there. The Jazz seem to be losing, but Lauri Markkanen is a guy who's given the Knicks problems in the past. Do you put OG on him? If you do, I think they're in pretty good shape. Although it's not the best necessarily skill set for OG, given that you don't really want him having to chase a guy off a million screams, but I'm not too worried about the Jazz. But the Suns, Nuggets, and Mavericks, those are some interesting games, just because because of the kind of problems they pose. I am much more optimistic about the Suns and Mavericks, defending the Suns and Mavericks, than I am the Nuggets. Short answer. The Nuggets are a 5-out team with a lot of ball movement. They have the only center at this point who I think can outscore. That's not true. Wemby is up there too, but Cat and Jokic should be a fun matchup. It's one of the few times I actually think we probably come off on the worst end of that matchup. Their defense hasn't been great, the Nuggets. So, this is probably a game where there's a lot of potential for Brunson to have a big game. But it'll be interesting to see. I think Cat is frankly not a great answer against Jokic.
He's done well against Jokic in his career.
He did well in the playoffs last year, right?
He's in the last couple of years. They played him in the year before too. He actually did a good job on him in that series. Relatively speaking, it's Jokic, obviously, so he's going to put numbers on anybody.
I have felt like, I know the rim protection numbers are wonky or whatever, but I just felt like anytime he's in good position and contest, it just doesn't fucking matter this year.
But Jokic is weird. Jokic is a different thing because it's not like I think
Yeah.
what Cat really struggles with is the pick and roll, right? He's not a good pick and roll
I
defender.
don't think he's a great post, or he's just not an impactful post defender. I think his positioning is good.
I think I agree with that. For whatever reason, he's done well against Jokic. I don't know why. I don't know what the answer to that is.
Yeah.
But the Nick OG is also somebody who's done really well against Jokic. In general, OG has a very, very strong track record against Denver. So if you're betting and you're looking for value, that might be a good Knicks money line play. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, and then it's the Mavericks, who I feel like the Knicks always play well against, but Luka just like we haven't played them. Have we played them with OG?
Yeah. Wait. Oh, Dallas. Yeah, we
Yeah.
played them last year with OG, and that was
But
that weird game
Brunson
in
was out,
Dallas.
right?
No,
Brunson.
Brunson played that. That was the game in Dallas where we like started off like crap, and then we almost made a comeback, and then we gave
Was
up
that
like
the game
two
where like
offensive.
Kyrie had a bunch of points?
Kyrie had a bunch. The Knicks wouldn't trap him for some reason, so he just kept getting like to walk into pull up jumpers, and it was stupid until the fourth quarter. Whatever. The Knicks lost that game. It was like it was during that awesome month. It was one of their 2 losses.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see, how they defend Luka, and how they defend Kyrie. Right now, they now have a couple of wings, but I think those Phoenix and Dallas games will be really interesting to see. The wing stop thing, right? If they can start to activate on the potential, as well as all three are interesting tests for Tibbs in terms of do you start? Kyrie's a guy who's always killed the Knicks no matter what team he's on. Do you trap more? Against Jokic? I think actually Tibbs has had some good game plans against Jokic. There was that blowout last year, but even before that, the year before they blew them out without Mitch. I think last year when we blew them out, it was without Mitch or Hartenstein, right? So I like the way he sends doubles at Jokic, but there's a couple of unique challenges. The Suns have big time scoring wings, like what you'll see in Boston. And the Mavericks have a guard who's killed us, and one of the top 2 or 3 players, and they can go 5 out too. So these kind of ball movement, wide open offenses, with some quick guards, some dynamic players. How does Tibbs adapt? I don't know. If you can go though, out of those 4 games, if you can go 2-2, I'd take that. Knicks, Jazz, Suns, Nuggets, and Mavs.
Yeah. Jazz are weird. They've been terrible. I don't know what to make of that team. It seems like
they're tanking, right?
They are tanking, but the roster is basically the same as it was last year, and they weren't this bad last year. So I don't know what's happening there. Maybe I don't know. I could see that being a weird dynamic where half the guys in the team are like, "Hey, are you gonna trade me or what?" Because if I'm Jordan Clarkson or Colin Sexton, I'm probably like, "So when are you trading me, pal? Like I know you don't want me. So when is that happening?" So I can see that maybe
Patty Mills is still playing well. Did not know
in spirit.
Yeah, I mean, I like some of their young players. I mean, Filipowski, I think, has looked well.
He's played well.
Prez was really high on him. Taylor Hendricks was the guy I really wanted in the draft before. And we've talked about Kessler. Do you see them moving Kessler anymore? I don't know if I'm that big on a big anymore.
I don't know. I have no clue what to make of that. I don't know what to do with that team because it's just like to your point, they just have so many guys that I'm like, you gonna make a decision here or what? Like, because you can't have all of them, right? Like you can't. It's not feasible to have all these dudes. And then they have to do this weird thing with John Collins where he like has to play because they're trying to shop him, and he's got this huge contract. But it's like, why did you take on this contract to begin with? It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I don't know.
Do you think John Collins is a good comp for Obi Toppin? I mean, at this point, I think that they're pretty similar.
That was always kind of the comp, right? That was always kind of like
and it's kind of come to fruition. And Obi is on a fair value for that deal, and John Collins makes twice as much, right? So
yeah, it's not great, and yeah, it's rough.
Might have always surpassed him as a 3-point shooter, and neither of them is a great defender anyway. So it's not like Collins is some stopper. So
I thought Collins was taking at least somewhat of a positive step the year that they beat us in the playoffs, but yeah, I mean, it hasn't really gone anywhere since then. So
and that series was a joke. Like, can we just be real about? I mean, maybe it's because that Knicks team, like, compared to this one, is just so different. But the Knicks had one threatening. I mean, they had 2 threatening players really in that series. Everyone in Atlanta looked good.
Yeah.
I mean, what are your thoughts on the road trip though? Like, were you kind of circling? I mean, there's three championship contenders we're facing, right? So that'll be.
Phoenix is weird. Durant's out. They haven't been great lately because of that.
Is
I think
he like out? He's not going to
he'll
play.
be. He won't play for this. I'd be shocked if he plays this game. Nurkic has been terrible. Booker always gives us issues though. He's always been a Nick killer, so that'll be one to watch. That's also a good matchup. Like, hey, like I've been encouraged by what I've seen from Mikal Bridges over the last probably like 4 games. Really since the Chicago game, even the Philly game, I thought he played well. But the Chicago game, and since then, I thought he was the one guy on our team that played well defensively against Chicago. And then I thought he played well against both the Nets games and last night.
He's got familiarity with Booker too, right? So
yeah, so that'll be interesting to see. Definitely interested in that. I think Budenholzer's really getting as much as he can out of a lot of that roster. But they're spread a little thin, so we'll see how that goes. Denver, obviously, for obvious reasons, is just like, yeah, I want to see that. The Dallas one is the one though. That's it for me. Like I really want to see that game. I think they're a interesting matchup for us. I think they're a tough matchup in a lot of ways, given Luka's pick and roll prowess. That could be very rough for Cat if the Knicks don't have different answers to throw at them. And not gonna lie, I think that could be a game that the Knicks get a lesson. To be completely honest, I think that could be a rough game for the Knicks because I think that their upside defensively right now, anyway, clearly trumps ours. And
wait, is this Dallas or
Dallas?
Yeah.
And offensively, their very, very specific skill with both Luka and Kyrie as pick and roll ball handlers is something that can be very problematic for us. That would be a game. It would be really nice to have Precious back for that game. I will say that.
That's not a possibility though, is it?
I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. Well, we'll see. If he travels with the team, I think that's a really good sign for his potential to come back during the course of the season, or not the course of the season. Jesus, the course of the road trip. But I don't know if he's going to travel with the team or not.
Are they still starting Kleba, or do they start Gafford?
They started Kleba, and I think Lively or Gafford. It seems to vary, but I think it's been Lively that's been starting. So
yeah, and they have Lively has the length to cause some, like they can switch with Lively, right?
Yeah.
On some of the Knicks pick and rolls, which is a thing that's caused the Knicks trouble. I mean, the thing that like Boston can do that Dallas can't is Boston can throw elite defensive wings, and Dallas's star wing does not give a shit about defense. I don't know if like you attack Luka really just in ISO. I hope the Knicks don't like mass mismatch hunt Luka so much as like just make him do shit off ball and just like watch him struggle. Because he's like if even like if you post him up, like Brunson or like Bridges trying to post up Luka is not actually ideal against them. Yeah, it feels like Kyrie always kills the Knicks. The pick and roll defense is still very much a work in progress. If you hedge, they're all good passers. They all can shoot. And Lively is an active guy and can get after it on the glass and can protect the rim and can switch a little bit on Brunson. So at this point in the season, it's going to be a tough challenge. Just an interesting note. This is the 9th most likely finals matchup, Knicks Mavericks, according to FanDuel. So could be a preview of June.
Yeah. We'll see. We will see. Should be a fun matchup.
And we didn't talk about Charlotte's the last game, NBA Cup. Do you feel
the need to?
I think I've liked what I've seen from LaMelo this year. So, I
really liked what I've seen from LaMelo this year. He's playing way more serious basketball, and I just like what they're doing. They seem like,
and they kind of, Trey Mann has looked good, and they got him for the corpse of Gordon Hayward. Against the quote unquote smartest GM in the history of basketball. So it wasn't a quote, but that's just how he seems to be described all the time. So,
well, what I will say is, I think I have a lot more confidence in their kind of future right now than than Washington. Like, I have more faith in their front office.
That's fair. I
I
mean, but
think-
they have a star. I think LaMelo has proven to be a star level offensive creator, right? So I think that's
don't whatever you do, don't compare his numbers to Tyrese Halliburton's this year. Just saying. All right. I think that's a good place to end it. Right on a Halliburton little shot to the nuts there. All right.
Mission accomplished. So
Stacy, let the people know they can find you and plug anything you'd like to plug.
you can find me at StacyPadden89. Nothing to plug except all the great work at the Strickland.
I have nothing to plug. I will plug. Give us a follow over on Blue Sky. Same at the Strickland. So we're posting a lot of content on there too now, not just on Twitter. So give that a follow if you are making the switch. You can also follow me also at Shwin and on there. Same thing. I am posting mostly exclusively on there now. I'm fairly over whatever the fuck Twitter is becoming. So
is Blue Sky your Tommy DeVito and Elon is Daniel Jones?
I think Blue Sky is like my Josh Allen and Twitter is like my Nathan Peterman. So, all right. That is a good place to end it. Thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you to our sponsor, Bet Online. Hope everybody has a great week. Hope everybody enjoys the Knicks West Coast trip. I have nothing else to plug, so we're going to get out of here. Peace.